today. So this is the third in our series of events for 2023. And obviously our commitment this time has been around, particularly around communities, neighborhoods, with an emphasis on the learning aspect of that. And in particular, today we're going to be talking about community-based perspectives on a range of issues. And we're going to be talking to colleagues from two particular organisations, and we're also hoping to hear from other people. So we're going to start basically for the first 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes, just doing a broad introduction rather than using slides this time, because a lot of you who've been to several of these events will have seen our PowerPoint slides a number of times, and we're not going to go over the origins of the research circle in quite that way. Ian and I are just going to have a brief dialogue with one another about kind of formation of the research circle, and I'll talk at the very end of the session about some prospects and ideas for next year and for the future of the research circle. So I'll hand to Ian now.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. It's great to see everybody, and one of the things that's great is that we all have had experience, and Peter was called Sue, and lots of us have had this about signing in and those experiences. One of the other things that I think is really interesting is sometimes you have a very high number of people sign up, and then the actual people attending is often far fewer. We've got 25 people on the participating today, which is pretty much the numbers who've signed up. So that's great. So everybody, very welcome. We've got 3 questions. My first one is a question to Sharon. Sharon, could you just give us a bit of context, and why did you establish the research circle, and why did you invite us to join you?
So this does go back to some initial dialogues through the Centenary Commission for Adult Education, which people will probably be familiar with now, and you've certainly heard me speak about in previous sessions if you've been coming along in the past. There was a view that the chapters in the Centenary Commission report required effort and attention to make anything of a reality of them, in the sense that they were carefully researched. Scylla, myself and Nick Mahoney were behind a lot of that community-based research which went into the Centenary Commission report. But we felt that we needed some form of circle or group of activists, practitioners and researchers to come together to take forward the key themes in the Centenary Commission report. And the one that I offered to take on, which was focusing on dialogue, democracy and debate, in particular at community level, was the one that took off. We had an event supported by the Co-op College when Scylla was there in 2020. We established a group that year with the research circle, and we've basically been meeting as a research circle. And I see that group as a very committed group of practitioners, academics, researchers, activists who come together to try and convene this really important theme around fostering community democracy and dialogue, which we've all been working really hard as a collective to try to bring to fruition, particularly in these times when we see so little of these more radical voices, where we're really committed to thinking about activism, not just research, and bringing the two together. And that's pretty much, I would say, my kind of reasoning behind the research circle originally. And that's very much morphed very, very quickly into a partnership with Ian, as I'm sure people appreciate, and the research circle group, of which a number of people here have been incredibly active participants, and we've collaborated to make this work come to fruition. So the first year for me, because it was during the pandemic, it felt really important to return to Raymond Williams' idea of resources for a journey of hope. The idea that we needed, at a time of enormous uncertainty and pressure on communities and isolation for a lot of people, to start to think about what that meant for community activism, and how could we as a research circle foreground and move that kind of whole theme forwards. And we knew that doing it online might be one mechanism, particularly during the pandemic, because we as a group, including the research circle, have never met in person. Ian and I have met a couple of times, but that's literally it. We've generally, as a rule, since 21, been working through the online medium. That's really helped in the sense that it's given us the capacity to reach a much bigger audience, if you like, and a much more diverse geographical audience, in that we've had people from all kinds of international communities at different points. And so last year we looked at democracies in crisis. I think we felt that our efforts in year one, which were very much focused on community, on voice, and on that spirit of, as I said, a journey of hope in times of great conflict and trouble for all of us, and times when funding to the voluntary and community sector and to the wider adult education sector had been pretty much decimated. We felt that was a space for us to feel a sense of solidarity and community and collective, and a collective power that perhaps we don't have in individual organisations. So I've probably said enough. That's kind of my long preamble about why we established the group. So can you tell me what your thoughts are on that, Ian? I mean, you've been absolutely central to this from the start, really. So I wondered what your reflections were.
Well, I think my reflections were, I mean, I think with some other people on the call today were at the event back in June 2020, if I'm getting my chronology right, at the Co-op College that you hosted with Scilla, and then we all, a group of us, came together in September 2020. So I think part of my reflections have been about that whole process of online learning, you know, and us meeting together and working together to shape the event. So I think that itself, I think, is really interesting. I think there are a number of things that are outside of the time we've got now, but reflections that we could have on that. I think what that process did is it brought together people from adult education, people whose roots have been in community education, trade union education, HE, and FE. And I think that rich mixture of people within the research circle itself has been really interesting and useful. So we've kind of constantly debated both the organisation of the events, and so actually what we've got to now is, I think, a way in which where we have two sets of people in dialogue in the time that we have with discussion is, I think, something is, again, which is by design. And I think that has been something which hopefully today we'll see people find useful. So I think those have been about how we've worked collaboratively and how we're thinking about those events. In terms of actual some of the emerging themes, and I think my thoughts now are particularly about this last year, I think there have been some direct experiences of my own, and then also learning from others, which have been critical events. There have even been critical moments within dialogues where I might be listening to something that I've been familiar with in the past, but I've looked at it through fresh eyes. I'm thinking of Lyndon's dialogue with Colin and his work in Edinburgh, which I was familiar with from the past, but listening to that again gave me fresh insights. But in terms of the perhaps two or three themes, then listening to that, I think that, and we're going to hear about this today, I'm sure, is the fragility of funding, and the struggle for recognition that different organisations have faced in the face of dominant forms of lifelong learning. So the whole act of finding space for wider and deeper forms of lifelong education, and so work which might be around, you know, weaving together health, citizenship, different forms of political literacy, work with asylum seekers and refugees, and you know, back to I think one of the very first presentations, some of that work is embodied in what we're going to hear today. But I think that Rosie Farrer from the WEA spoke about work that she was involved with in Yorkshire, which for me showed one example of kind of what is possible. So I think that fragility of funding and a struggle for recognition, that's one theme. I think another, and this is a recurring issue for us directly and others, is the affective, how the health of those of us, you know, for all of us working in those different forms of struggles. And so I'm not generalizing, I'm recognizing the particular, I'm recognizing my privilege working in higher education. Although I've got fractional and temporary appointments, I'm still in a far more privileged position than many others. But the affective and how the health of us is in struggle, is actually also being shaped by particular forms of what we might even call toxic managerialism. So there are times in which people have spoken about that. But the third theme has been this thing about enduring hope, that I think that what the research circle has done, and you've brought and throughout, Sharon, us back to Raymond Williams and around those resources of hope, that I think that that's what each event has left us with. So I think that thing about fragility of funding and struggle, the affective but enduring hope, that's for me now today where I am in my thinking. You know, I've reread different blogs and you know, the notes of Lyndon in discussion with, in dialogue with Fergal, Joe, Antonia, Lyndon and Colin, and those are that's my thinking now today, and that's why I'm just really interested in the dialogues today and where that takes us. And you know, it'll take us into other areas, but I think that these themes around imagining other possibilities, that's partly what we've started with. And so my last thought is, you know, we began with this thing about memory, about the memory of what's gone before, and that memory of what's gone before is a resource for shaping what we do in the now and what we do in the future. So I think that's those are my thoughts today. Yeah.
Thank you, Ian. Fantastic. We'll talk a bit more at the end as we come to the end of the session about plans and ideas for next year. But obviously, we're interested in your perspectives on that too, because a number of you, many of you, in fact, have been involved in quite a significant number of these events, and we are committed to thinking about how we work to collectively forwards into the next phase of the research circle.